So, quick review now about the Baku, having had 24 hours to play around with it. We received our two Bakus from Fancy Impact Blasters there, which is the new released Gryphon style model. We got them as part of the mystery box for Easter that we purchased back at the start of the year, so we did not receive these free of charge, but these are entirely my thoughts, so to speak there. So, the Baku, what is it? It is essentially a remixed Gryphon. Now, brought down a couple of the Gryphons that we have here from the garage. So this is the Baku, okay, we got here, which is a dual stage trigger. It is the battery in the handle, and it's 130 FPS, which, before I forget this, it is Fang RV motors and Hurricane flywheels. Okay, now this is sold as a CQB format blaster, so essentially this is what you're getting. Okay, there is no stock, there is no swung point, there is no stock point. Okay, it is sold essentially as a CQB format pistol. Okay, we got them in two colours. One is the pastel colours. Sara swiped that before it was even out of the box, and I got the chocolate coloured one as an Easter themed. Okay. Now, the other thing, just before we get this, okay, this is running on a 2S battery. The battery is in the handle, as I previously said there, so you have to be careful about what battery you choose to put into it. There is quite a decent amount of space in here. Sara and I have been using these ones with a 2S rated for 900, and it fits in there with enough room for the wires, the XT30 connector, and then you just essentially pop it back in there. Okay, you will struggle to get anything bigger than that in, but I believe that is also bigger than a Nightingale's battery in terms of power, so probably should have double checked that one before doing the video. Anyway, we put in one of the thumbhole screws for the bottom of it, just for easy removal. I haven't replaced this one yet, but it's across there on the table, and that'll be getting done once the video is finished. so normally people would have some sort of like firing demo for the thing. It's a Gryphon. You want to see a firing demo for a Gryphon, go find one elsewhere. I ain't going to sit and do it. I did, however, get my hands on a chronograph to do some chronograph readings, as this is sold as a sub 130. So I got my hands on some chronograph readings, which I'll now incorporate into the video just now there, and I'll be back in a second. So this is test firing of the Baku. This will be with some small amount of pre-revving. So, how does the Baku actually feel in the hand. I've brought down a couple of the other Gryphons that we have for comparison there. Here is Sara's personal pistol format one, and here is Baku. So very similar in size, okay, slightly shorter, okay, but very similar in size. So if you've seen one of these, you get an idea of what it is. Key difference though in the design of it is that the handle is so much bigger. Now I've got quite big hands and I find it fitted mine easily enough. Sara has got much smaller hands than me and she still did not have a problem with this, so do not let this put you off if you're considering or interested in one of these there, okay. It is nice and tight in the hand there, okay. The lack of the stock point on this model does mean that it is very much designed for CQB, easy enough to switch hands without any problems there, okay. Two-stage trigger was something that I have never used before, so that took a little bit of getting used to. The idea of just holding in slightly to pre-rev and then pull it to fire. Both Sara and I are used to having the third button here, the rev trigger there, and almost every one of our blasters is on the Springer. So it took me a while to get used to this one there for getting that. So you know, if you're getting one of these, have a play around with it before you take it out to an event, because what you don't want to do is try to figure it out during the first match, you know. But it's, for all intents and purposes, a solidly weighty but not too heavy, really comfortable blaster there, okay. Now, so where does the Baku fit into a loadout there? I believe it's designed around being a sort of primary weapon for you, okay. You're not going to holster this easily, especially if you've got a magazine in it. You could in principle have a dump pouch. I've got one of the big ones I tended to like put a Jupiter into or something like that because it was awkward, so it would fit in there. But if you've got one of these in here, that's not fitting into a holster easily. But one of the guys was telling me that you could do either a sling point mounted on the rail. Fancy Impact themselves have said that they can do a stock point that you could incorporate a sling into, or you'd have a stock on it if you wanted to do so, as they have an attachment point to match the normal Gryphon there. I think personally, if I was having this, it would fit the primary role for me. I would have a secondary a pistol, you know, maybe just a hammer strike or the split strikers, a hammer shot rather, or a split strike. Just something for that emergency situation, but this is very much going to be filling the primary slot there, okay. It is comfy in the hands, and the lack of the stock point does mean that it's really easy to manoeuvre it around there. So yeah, it's been fun to play around with. So in terms of would I recommend the Baku, falls into sort of one of three categories, and it basically depends on, do you have a Gryphon already? Okay, Sara and I love our Gryphons, right? We've got 7 of them in total if you include these two, okay? So yeah, I'm a little bit biased, okay? I love the Gryphon, I love its design, I love the simplicity of it, I love the reliability of it, okay? It's a 3D printed blaster. You break a bit, you get a new bit printed, okay? They are mechanically solid and sound, and I like that. They are compact. I don't particularly care about having all singing, all dancing bits and pieces on it there. What I want is something that I can reliably shoot people with, or tag people with more accurately, because you got to watch things in these videos nowadays. So, do you have a Gryphon or not? Okay, if you don't have a Gryphon, then yeah, a Baku is a brilliant place to start. Okay, if you want it as exclusively a CQB pistol, okay, that's fine. This is it. Does exactly what it says in the tin. okay? If you wanted to put from stock point there, stock point, or swing point there, or stock point, okay? And you can put one on it, and you could do that. Okay, you could have like a worker stock, or even a Nerf brandy stock, whatever it is. You could have that if you wanted to do that. Okay. Might want to consider how the two-stage trigger actually feels. That for me took a bit of getting used to. Okay. When I was sitting playing around with that, if I was going into a room, I was very used to revving it, holding it, and being able to pick shots. Okay. Trying to hold it in slightly whilst moving around will take you a little bit of time to get used to. We're not talking days on end, but you know, I'll play around with it for half an hour before you do so. Okay. If you're somebody who's tending to pull the trigger randomly, you're going to fire off shots whether you like it or not, so just be aware of that. And there is no safety feature. What a point to consider there. Okay. If you have a Gryphon already, it kind of depends on what you have. Now, this one here is Sara's Gryphon, okay, and for all intents and purposes, it's the same thing. Okay, stock point, that's fine. Grip at the front, that's fine, and a slightly different nozzle. Okay, if you have one of these already, okay, where you have, I'll put this down for a second before I drop it. If you have one of these already where there is no electrics incorporated into the stock, okay, everything is completely inclusive here, and whatever sits on the end is completely removable without any problem. It is very difficult to recommend a Baku if you've already got this, because in my mind these are basically the same things. Okay, this is a good chunk cheaper though than this because it's less printed parts, and it is smaller for a few components, but it's very difficult to recommend getting a Baku if you've got one of these. Okay, if you've got like what I've got, then it would be a recommendation if you wanted to get a new blaster. Okay, this is my personal Gryphon. It has same setup, 130. For all intents and purposes, from here forward, it looks almost exactly the same. This is the Fancy Impact Blaster's thumbhole stock there. The battery is incorporated into this. This takes a 3S battery, whereas that one will run on a 2S. For me to transfer this and change it to look like Sara's or the Baku would involve undoing multiple screws, and then rebuilding the 3D printed parts to act as a battery tray for this. Okay, for me to do this, whenever I wanted to go from a sling or a stock point to a non-stock point form, is, I think, just a bad idea, because ultimately you're going to wear down the 3D printed parts. You'd ultimately have to get the heat sunk components to compensate for that. Okay, so if you have one of these where the electrics are incorporated, or the design of it is incorporated to be bolted together in multiple ways, then yes, absolutely, getting a CQB Baku is something you may want to consider there. Okay, because when I was down at Leeds at the foundry, and at Leeds Armenia Bradford it was, that stock got on the road a lot. Swapping shoulders was awkward with that, whereas having this would be so much smoother. Okay, so yeah, if you've got one of those, I'd recommend it. If you wanted another Gryphon format, if you've got one of Sara style, very difficult to recommend it. And if you don't have a Gryphon at all, it acts as a brilliant starting point, because with a few additional components you can have a stock point. Okay, our swing point. Okay, and so yeah, having had a play around with it for a day, the Baku is a lot of fun there. I would recommend it if you don't have a Gryphon, or if you have a incorporating complicated to disassemble Gryphon. It's a fantastic one model to start with. Okay, it is a good bit cheaper than a normal Gryphon is. So if you are financially more aware of how much your expenditure is on the hobby, it's also a good starting point there. Okay, it means that if you've got straight talon mags, for example, for the Worker Swift or any other number of bits and pieces, you don't necessarily have to buy into another magazine system as well. Like if you want to go for, say, the Nightingale or the Quick or whatever, you can basically just use good old fashioned straight talon mags there. So yeah, if you're interested, you can check them out at either Fancy Impact Plasters Direct there, or UK Nerf War. They've now got a category for 3D printed goods, so you can check them out there. Okay, I'd recommend that. Although I will say this, Ross, if you're watching this, I absolutely apologise for ever putting you in front of the camera at Foam Fest last year. This is about take 9 on trying this damn video. Yeah, I'm genuinely sorry for ever putting you on the spot, expecting you to be able to do a video at 0 notice there, buddy, so my apologies for that. Anyway, take care, everybody. Hope this has been useful and informative for you. Drop any comments in the section below there, and we'll check you out for the next video.